Peace and love, family. How is everyone doing tonight? Thank you for joining us on another edition of the RAM Book Club, Resurgence of the African Mind, where we seek to liberate African minds by reading one unit of work at a time. Of course, you guys know we have been reading Blueprint for Black Power by Baba Amos Wilson. We have been getting it in, family. We are on chapter 19. I was about to say 20. No, not yet, Lima. We are on chapter 19. I'm Lily La Poete Speaks. If you want to get the links to join the panel, you go to lilylapoetespeaks.com, click on the Blueprint for Black Power tab, and scroll down and click on the link to join the panel. Or if you would just like to be in the active discussion and watch, you can click that link as well. I am the author of Perceptions of a Misplaced African, available now on Kindle. And you can also get it at lilylapoetespeaks.com in the shop as well. Pick up some Ed Anime Productions merchandise, and then we're going to have some pants to wear soon, coming soon, family. So stay on the lookout for that. I'm going to pass the mic on to the rest of the panel, and thank you for joining us.
Peace and power.
Next?
Oh no, I was going to go next. Peace and
no, you the host. Go ahead, hit it.
Power, family. This is your sister, Dr. Maat. Legal name, Dr. Deanna Bailey. I am the co-founder of Ed Anime Productions, the co-executive producer of Meltrek, which is a hip-hop animated series that teaches children African history from an African perspective. Currently, we have 2 films available. Meltrek Episode 1, Exploring Ancient Africa, and Meltrek Episode 2, Exploring the Pre-Columbian Americas. To get both of these films, just simply go to Google search engine, type in Meltrek, and all the links to purchase our merchandise will generate. I'm happy to be here. As Sister Alima stated, man, we're on chapter 19 of Blueprint for Black Power. Okay, now this book has 31 chapters in total, and we're more than half the way there. I was already looking ahead, in chapter 20 and 21. Those are very short chapters, so we'll more than likely combine those and discuss those next week. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and pass the mic to our brothers and sisters on the panel. We got Sister Camille, Brother Tawola. We got Brother Knowledge Born Allah in the building. Thank you so much for joining us week after week after week. And I appreciate your presence and your dedication.
Thank you. Enele Eku Abo means hello and welcome. My name is Camille Gaynor Jones. It is my honor to be a part of tonight's program and sit on the panel with the illustrious family and those in the chat. I'm a professional drummer, educator, producer, and a clinician. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Looking forward to getting into this next chapter that our ancestor, Baba Amos Wilson, had the foresight to formulate for us to start to implement and teach to our family and friends. Thank you for tuning in.
I said, you got to say that line for me one more time. What does it mean again? That greeting was hot. It was hot.
Which means hello and welcome.
And what language is that, sis?
Yoruba.
Oh, say it again for Sister Alima missed it. That was hot. Say it again. She missed it.
Enele Eku Abo. Which means hello and welcome.
Yes.
So it's sis. We gotta get back. We gotta get back to speaking in our tongues, man. We gotta get back. We have to get back. That's a part of liberation. Gotta get back.
For real.
Brother T.
Hello, family. My name is Johnson Toe. I'm just happy to be on the panel to discuss chapter 19. I'm a proud husband, a proud father, and I just want to be here to do my part in the community. And I'm looking forward to our works and upcoming works with this book, great book by Baba Wilson.
Brother Knowledge Born Allah.
It's our pool, Uncle Joshua Nair, peace, love, and black power. It's your brother Knowledge Born Allah here, through Knowledge Radio. Definitely an honor and a privilege every single Sunday to be tuned into the resurgence of the African Mind Book Club, where these illustrious warrior queens, these African warrior goddesses have taken the initiative in facilitating a space where the resurgence of the African mind can not only be a resurgence, but the proper cultivation of the African mind. It's taking place here every Sunday with this illustrious sacred text right here. I can't even call it a book no more. The sacred text that Dr. Amos Wilson left us as an inheritance to glean from. You know, I've seen this on a lot of bookshelves and on a lot of book lists, but I didn't see implementation of this magnitude where people are gathering together to glean from this works as an African collective. So salute and honor to the warrior goddesses for having that foresight and vision to put together a group, and as it continues to grow throughout the weeks, I'm very excited to be a part of that. So that's what I wanted to say.
Ashe.
Have you written any books, Brother Knowledge?
Have I who?
Have you written any books?
I'm in the process of writing the.
You know, you have to write a book. I have to read it because the way you speak, I know that if you write a book, it will be amazing. I have to read it.
Well, I'm writing the Do the Knowledge radio series. I'm in the process of writing it now. You know, so get to hear the thoughts and behind the scenes and the inner workings and the nervousness and all of the stuff that went along with 700 or so episodes there on Do the Knowledge radio. So that series will be out soon.
Sister Aleem, I often tell him that he just has a way with words. I love the way he articulates. I love the way he articulates himself. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful.
I get it from my mama, by the record. You know, if y'all seen anything, that video I sent out, there's a video in circulation on Brother Rich's channel. He called me in November of 2008. We did a 2-day conference in Germany, and my mother spoke there. And there's a clip, like a 30-minute clip. I'll send it to anybody who doesn't have it, so you can see. I really got it. I got it. I'll resend it out. It out so you can see. But literally, I got it from my mama.
Fantastic, brother. Brother Impool, peace and power to you, brother.
Peace, brother. We can't hear you, brother. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. Somebody help him out. Help him out, sis.
Speak, brother.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. As you can see, I got kicked out of my man cave. I'm in my daughter's room. You know, real men rep pink, right, Brother T?
If you say so, brother.
Real men rep pink.
That's right.
But peace and Black power forever and ever and ever. What a pleasure it is to be on with the RAM Book Club family, Resurgence of the African Mind. I'm just ready to get started. I apologize for being late. Trying to get things situated in the home, but I'm ready to jump in and learn and share.
Oh, no doubt. You always got to take care of home first. You know what I mean?
That's it.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. All right, so kick it off, Sister Alima, chapter 19, the paucity of Black wealth.
All right, family. Of course, you know, last week, chapter 18, we talked about the benevolent front assault, local and global African markets. We also talked about the Community Development Corporation. This week, we are talking about the paucity of Black wealth. This was a really interesting chapter. It had a lot of, even though a lot of these statistics are older statistics, as we'll get into later, you know, it hasn't really changed very much, which is kind of sad. But in this chapter, we shall follow the central contention argued by David Swinton in a series of articles published since 1988 in National Urban League's annual State of Black America. He asserts that only when Blacks own enough to be equal participants in the nation's economy will they be able to ensure their own prosperity and equality. He goes on down in the middle and says, however, more to his credit is his insistence on the idea that the economic status of Blacks depends on the level and character of Black participation in American economic life. Emphasis added. Also, while recognizing that there has been a substantial increase over the past 2 decades in the proportion of African Americans who can be classified as solidly middle and upper middle class, according a number of income and social measures, trends indicate that an increasingly larger proportion of the community is experiencing economic stagnation, decline, and deterioration. It is also important to keep in mind that approximately 1/2 of Black children belong to poor families. With reference to the character and level of Black participation in American economic life, Swinton has consistently argued the following. That's all I have on this page. Anybody else?
No, but sis, you're right. These statistics haven't changed at all. I mean, if you go to Black demographics, I believe it's called blackdemographics.org or .com, they said that there's a statistics up there that states that 51% of us live below the poverty line. 51% of us live at or below. So for him to say that Black children belong to poor families, he said 1/2 of Black children belong to poor families. And this book was published almost 20 years ago. I mean, it remains the same. I don't have anything else on this page. I did highlight the last paragraph that says the low relative economic status of Blacks and high share of economic burdens borne by Blacks have their economic origins in Blacks' limited ownership of human and non-human capital. And we don't own anything, sis.
Exactly.
And these limitations have 2 impacts: of ownership and control of business enterprises. So we don't own and we don't control. He says that this limitation forces Blacks to be dependent on white-owned or controlled businesses for jobs, income, and goods and services. This makes them vulnerable to the possibility of discrimination, right? So you can only be discriminated against when you don't own and control anything. Right. The limit may make them less attractive to potential employers, which would limit the quantity and quality of opportunities that business owners are willing to provide for them.
Right.
These 3 factors, limited ability for self-employment, limited attractiveness to employers, and racial discrimination, combine to produce the high level of racial disparity. So he's talking about these 3 factors, which I have underlined.
You know, that when he that stood out to me when Baba was saying that limited human capital of Blacks may make them less attractive to potential employers, because, you know, of course, naively, you think that everyone, you know, we may think there's a little disparity because we're Black, but you think that, you know, if I'm qualified education wise, then, you know, I should be able to be employed. But when I took a job training class, they taught us a lot. They taught us certain things, like when employers look at your address and they'll go to Google Maps and see where you live. You know what I mean? Like, you could be as qualified as you want, but if you live somewhere in the ghetto, you know what I mean? Regardless if you have a bachelor's degree, they're not going to pick you, because to them you don't seem like, you know, you wouldn't be good material, even though you may be qualified. So it's like certain things like that kind of just made me think of that when he said that to employers. And I never even thought of that. So he was like, if you live in a ghetto and then you got an auntie who lives in a nice neighborhood, then use her address. Like stuff like that. Like, it's that deep. Or like not putting your social security number down on applications if you really don't have to. Like stuff like that, because they'll pull and try to run your credit and things of that nature. You know what I mean? It's amazing.
They'll use everything against us. As you mentioned, they'll use your zip code. They'll use even your name. They'll use your social security number. All these things. That's where the predatory lending comes from. All that, everything they use against us, what we think will be for us. And even you said, even with the college education, they'll look at all these factors just to be discrimination, but they'll keep it under the table.
Mm-hmm.
On some red line things, issues. But you're absolutely right. In terms of the page we just read, Dr. Maat, when it based down to how we're perceived of not having human capital, I talked about Sandy Darity prior to going live. One thing that he mentioned was baby bonds. I don't see it happening in this. Them giving us reparations in that action, making sure that every family can increase their net worth by receiving these bonds when a child is born. So we can kind of close that wealth gap by receiving that $50,000 bond. because that's what's missing. You know, like you said, no one's going to look at a poor child and give a poor child opportunities. It's just that simple. We're facing that in 1988, and we're facing with that 2018. So that was a suggestion and something that he put into plan. If anyone have any time, look in Sandy Darity's research and his reparations.
Brother Johnson, I think you're breaking up. I think people in the chat are saying your sound is not right.
Yeah, it's choppy, brother.
Okay.
Yeah, staticky.
Thank you, but I'm gonna stop there and work on that. But can you hear me now?
It's still staticky. Maybe try to dip out and come back in.
That's what I'll do.
But he was saying to check on, because I couldn't kind of make it out either. He was saying to check on something about baby bonds.
Yeah, baby bonds. Right. And what's the person's last name, sis? Darity? How you spell it?
Darity. I-T-Y. He's an economist, black economist.
Okay, and this black economist is saying that baby bonds may help to close the wealth gap. Wealth gap.
Yeah, that's one of the ways of getting reparations.
Right.
But
okay. Yeah, I'm gonna check into that.
Yeah, I'm writing
down. One of the many ways
they're interested in closing the wealth gap. That's just my opinion. I don't think that they're really interested in closing the wealth gap, because wealth is what gives you power. So now if you're equal to me in wealth, I have no power. I have no control. I can't dominate you, because now we're equal, right? So I don't think that they have any interest in closing the wealth gap. You know, hence the reason why, one of the reasons why I vehemently believe that we haven't received any reparations. Nobody cares. And nobody's interested in helping you. Nobody wants to help you to become powerful. No,
well,
so you can compete.
They, took all those resources. I mean, I think the stats today are owning 90% of wealth and resources, and Black people here own 3%.
Less than 3, too.
Yeah, that's one of the stats. It's crazy.
All right, family.
But what they do, well, go ahead.
All right, so
let's move on.
Anything else on page 470?
Testing 1, 2. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, you're clear now.
Yeah,
right, thank you.
Oh, I just wanted to read this real quick, sis. He said reductions in racial disparities in wealth, business ownership, and human capital, argues Swinton, are necessary to eliminate the income disparities that arise from returns on ownership of production, wealth, and self-employment. In sum, economic well-being depends on the amount of assets, rent, interest, profits, or wealth one owns in addition to earned income wages. Wealth refers to the difference between assets and liabilities. It reflects savings and investments that can be drawn on in a time of need, those resources that can be passed on from one generation to the next. I just want to read that that little small part, the reference to wealth.
That was very powerful. That was very powerful. So the difference between assets and liabilities.
Right.
That is
liability with debt. All right.
Absolutely. So then he says the disparities in wealth between African Americans and white Americans and other ethnic Americans are the primary reasons Blacks have been unable to overcome racial inequality and relative political powerlessness.
That's right.
I think that Dr. Wilson does a great job, and he's emphasized this like throughout every chapter.
Yes.
You gotta be, in order to have political power, you have to have economic power. He's saying these two are inextricably bounded, right? And he says that a lot throughout the chapters. So we wonder why we are political powerless people, or we're politically powerless because we are economically powerless.
That's right. Where we move on to the table, sis?
Yes. That's where I was getting ready to go.
Okay.
First table, he it's a table called Wealth Ownership in 1988. This is on page 1, holding it up for you guys to see. Page 471. Now, this data was collected in 1998. And the source is US. Yeah, that's what I said, 1988. I said 98 or 88?
You said 98.
Oh, 88, yeah. Source is U.S. Department of Commerce, Household Wealth and Asset Ownership, 1988, December 1990, table 1988, December 1990, table 3. Question, y'all, is there any way that someone, I can Google it, if someone could pull up wealth ownership, like a current table, if they have something, you know, from 2014, 2015, 2016, it would be cool to kind of compare and contrast. And yeah, while I'm reading through the table, and I'm just going to kind of peruse it. This table displays the mean wealth holdings between blacks and whites at this particular time. The percent owning each type of wealth, the per capita wealth holdings, and the aggregate wealth holdings. So on the side column, he lists the total net, and then he has interest earning at financial institutions, regular checking, stocks and mutual funds, equity in business, equity in motor vehicle, equity in home, equity in rental property, U.S. savings bonds, IRA, it says in chaos. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And if you look at this chart, like if you compare each row, like, and you just compare black to white, you'll see that whites, of course, own way more. So for example, I'm looking at interest earnings at financial institutions. It's saying mean wealth holdings, black people, 5,008, but white, 21,748. So, I mean, this is the difference. I'm trying to give you a difference now. So for regular check-in, it says mean holdings of blacks, 822 versus white people, which is 1,243. Now, let's look at stocks and mutual funds. Look at this, stocks and mutual funds. Black people, 4,220. Whites, 32,582. Now, this is the mean wealth holdings.
I found something, sis.
Oh, you found something?
Source is the Urban Institute survey of financial characteristics. So this survey is from 1962 to 2016.
Oh, wow. I think that would be showing page, like this one just lists 1988. But share your screen, sis, so we can see it, so we can actually compare the years. I mean, the disparity is like sickening.
Right.
When I look at this chart.
Oh, wait.
Equity in home, 42,000 for blacks. Mean wealth holdings, 42,334. For whites, 73,871.
I think I clicked the wrong one. Did I click the right one? Can you see it, sis? Why look
myself? No.
Hold on. Can y'all see my screen?
Yes.
You see the chart?
Yep.
Yeah, but it's not. Click on it.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, so right here it says this is the racial and ethnic wealth disparities. 2016, the average white wealth, it says $9,919. Y'all see that?
Yeah.
And then black, it says 139,000. Hispanic 191,000. This is 2016. 2013, whites was 717,000. Blacks was 102,000. Hispanics were still above us, 111. So we actually decreased a little bit. So it seems like we've been going up and down. 2007, blacks were at 156, which is interesting. Then we went back down in 2013.
Just go to 1989 for me.
1989. Okay. Right here. Can you see it?
Yes. So the Hispanics, they've been kind of beating us out. The majority of
them. Oh, wow, right?
Absolutely. This is 1989. We're looking at, goodness gracious.
And this 92 right here. Look at the huge gap, though, between even the whites and blacks and Hispanics. Like, it's humongous.
Absolutely. Huge disparity.
Seriously, it's amazing. Wow. I mean, this is the white chart, of course, the blue one. You see the all the way up here.
Right.
It's the blacks and everybody else fighting for the
right. Right. The minimal resources.
Right. This is sad, family. But this site, family, if y'all want to go, is apps.urban.org. But their sources is the Urban Institute, which of course is a valid source. So y'all know. All right.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. And but I just want to read down the gap really quickly. On the chart, Dr. Amos Wilson said that the net gap shows on page 471 that the net gap in 1988 was $1 million, $1,065,224. That was the gap. Okay, the total net gap of wealth ownership between blacks and whites. All right, that was the net. 1,065,224. And this is when he combined, the wealth ownership again, the interest earning at financial institutes, regular checking, stocks and mutual funds, equity in business, equity in motor vehicle, equity in home, equity in rental property, other real estates, U.S. saving bonds, IRA, and I think that says KOGS or something like that. But he said the net was 1,065,225. But thanks for showing that chart, Sister Alima. So basically, you're letting us know that the damn Hispanics beating us out now. We can go ahead and move on.
It's been going on for a minute. I'm going to put this thing in the chat. You can check out these stats too.
Throw it up, sis. Share your screen.
Okay. Wait a minute. Hold on here. I got to put it. I got to bring it up on the other. Hold on. Let me bring it up on the other. Sorry. I was on a different. Just a second. Okay. Let's see.
While you doing that, I see Brother T has something that he has up. Brother T?
Yes, I'm trying. This is my first time doing this, so I'm trying my best.
I think I got it up. Can y'all see that?
No.
Hold on. Let me do it again here.
I don't see it, sis. Brother T.
Yes.
Hold on, let me see. Hold on. There we go, Sister Camille. Let me click on. I see it. Black wealth in America hardly exists. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. Especially when you get down to where it says if you deduct the family car and other depreciating assets from net worth, half of all of Black American households hold less than $1,700 in wealth. The net worth of the median white family remains $100,000 using the same method of accounting. Is that somebody else's?
Yeah, it was.
Okay. Yeah, so that's really alarming. And it also says it would take 228 years for the average Black family to amass the same level of wealth the average white family holds today.
Mm.
According to the Institute on Assets and Social Policy, for each dollar of increase in average income that African American households saw between 1984 and 2009, just 69 cents in additional wealth was generated, compared with the same dollar in increased income, creating an additional $5.19 in wealth for a similarly situated White House. It's pretty crazy. Let's see, the all-white top 25 on the 2016 Forbes 400 have a combined net worth of over $900 billion. over 37% of the total 2.4 trillion in wealth held by all 400. Wealth in America is simply not diverse, and that reality remains true no matter how many times we are shown LeBron James in his mansion in commercials.
That's right.
Right.
And there's a whole bunch of other data on it. It's really, you know, in fact, the 2.4 trillion held by the Forbes 400 amounts to more than the combined wealth of all 41 million Black Americans. It's saying that 400
people have more wealth than 41 million
Black Americans.
That's deep.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, it is deep, sis.
No, it's crazy. People, it's like, and another thing too, a lot of people, that's the reason why we don't realize, you know, that inequality in as far as money is that we because of credit too. That's one way, because if you didn't have credit, if you had to pay cash for most of the stuff, which is what the wealthy do, you wouldn't be able to afford it.
No, exactly.
So that kind of masks it too, as far as, you know, actually what, you know, what we control as far as resources and wealth. That, you know, they always, you know, propping up these entertainers and sports figures, but that's like 200,000 of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Michelle book, he calls that black.
What is that?
Dedicates an entire chapter to talking about Black exceptionalism and how we are caught up in that, and we think that things are changing. We think that we are progressing because we see, you know, Black millionaires, but that's not the case. He said we're looking at exceptional.
Yeah, there's only like 100,000, 200,000 of them
out of 41 million.
Right.
Wow.
That's not it, you know. And then when you try to express this to people, they argue you down that they're not poor. I'm like,
yeah, you are.
Very.
And if you you know, realize where you stand, then you can do something about it. But if you're delusional, you know, and live all vicariously through TV, that's why nothing can be done about it. Or because you can buy cheap goods.
That's right.
Oh, cheap goods. You can go to the store and buy some cheap goods.
And that's what convinces people that they have money, because they can spend.
Exactly.
As long as they can continue to spend, then they're convinced that they're fine.
Right.
Brother Tawola.
Yes, sis.
Did you want to show? Did you want to share something, bro?
Yeah, I did. Trying to pull it up. Hope I got it right. Let me see.
Yay.
Tone Talks brings to you the racial wealth gap in America. Explained in
Oh yeah. Dig it, play that.
Living in just about 82 million.
Is that showing?
No, you had it showing initially, and then you did something, and now it's not.
To truly understand the racial wealth gap.
Now it's showing. So you had to be watching it too.
Okay.
All right, and now maximize it at the bottom, bro. Like go to the bottom right corner. You see where it has like that, those broken brackets at the bottom right. Take your mouse and put it at the bottom right corner of the video. And you see where those broke right there. Yeah, and you want to maximize it. Click it.
To truly understand the racial wealth gap, you must look past the income of these people to evaluate household worth.
See.
Click it again.
You want to click you're pointing to it, but you're not clicking.
I thought it said it was unavailable. It said full screen and it's unavailable.
Oh, okay. All right, bro. So just take it from the top and we'll listen in.
Okay.
There it is.
Explained in 60 seconds. In America, there are 190 million whites living in just about 82 million homes.
Turn your volume up.
Living in just over 14 million homes. To truly understand the racial
high.
wealth gap, you must look.
Let me see something.
And evaluate household worth. According to demos.org, in total, white American households own 90% of the national wealth. In contrast, Black Americans altogether own less than 2.6% of the national wealth. With most of this small sliver being in the hands of Black baby Black working age families are largely invisible nationally in terms of wealth. To give a clearer lens, the bottom 50% of American households control only 1% of the national wealth. And of the total 14 million Black households, likely over 10 million Black families fall into this bottom group that owns nearly no.
All right, hey, bro, we good now. Take it from the top for me one more time. It's only 60 seconds.
While 10
now we can hear it.
Or about 8 million white homes.
Start it over.
Yes.
Tone Talks brings to you the racial wealth gap in America, explained in 60 seconds. In America, there are 190 million whites, living in just about 82 million homes.
Cut it back up again, bro.
Blacks, living in just over 14 million homes. To truly understand the racial wealth gap, you must look past the income of these families and evaluate household worth. According to demos.org, in total, white American households own 90% of the national wealth. In contrast, Black Americans altogether own less than 2.6% of the national wealth. With most of the small sliver being in the hands of Black baby boomer retirees, Black working age families are largely invisible nationally in terms of wealth. To give a clearer lens, the bottom 50% of American households control only 1% of the national wealth. And of the total 14 million Black households, likely over 10 million Black families fall into this bottom group that owns nearly no wealth. The racial wealth gap is real and it's growing. While 10% or about 8 million white homes are worth $1.4 million or more, according to Slate.com, when you deduct the family car, 50% of African American homes, or over 7 million Black families, are worth no more than $1,700. Subscribe to learn more at tonetalks.org.
Okay.
Wow. That was.
And it just shows you that right there that, like you said, Sister Camille said it best. We have our brothers and sisters who do not want to even admit that they are in dire situation. So if you can't talk group economics if a person doesn't understand where they are.
Right.
So until I came to this information, I could understand why I didn't have money to support. I had to learn the information to realize exactly where I was at. And as she made clear notice, when you tell people, they don't want to hear it because they think they're rich because they have credit rich. They're credit rich.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't help each other if we don't know where we are. So we have to see the data before we move forward. That's why this book is so great. What Barbara Wilson wrote, he forces us to look at the data. And from that,
right,
we can help each other and we can practice group economics because we know our situation.
And that was beautifully said, brother Tuola. That was beautifully said. And you're right, Dr. Amos Wilson does force us to look at ourselves, our current, standing, and to look at the data. I just want to bring you all attention to page 459. And this wasn't out in the last chapter that we went over. This is the chapter we went over last week, I believe, chapter 18, Benevolent Front Assaults Local and Global African Markets. And at the bottom of this page, he talks about closing the wealth gap between Blacks and whites through reparations. He's saying that is the major case for reparations. He says, and I want to read this. He says, consequently, while prior forms of white domination and exploitation of Blacks may have ceased and desisted, the economic injustices and inequalities they impose continue unabated. See, a lot of people don't understand what the amount of wealth that whites accumulated during slavery and during Jim Crow. They have no idea. People keep saying just in the past, Doc, that was just in the past. But how did that shape our current economic and political condition? People don't understand that. So anyway,
and it's the same money. Like
Right. I was getting ready to say.
Money. I don't understand when people say that either. Like, what do you mean? That's how they are in the position that they are in today. How is that?
Yeah,
correlation and causation? Like, come on now.
Yeah, they be saying slavery in the past. I'd be like, well, yeah, but the money ain't.
Right.
But
that's exactly.
And Mr. Lily said,
yeah, money ain't in the past.
They're using the same money.
The same money.
They're just passing it down from generation to generation, reinvesting. And so, so look, he says that justice requires not only, he says the legal prohibition of further injustices does not necessarily mean that the injurious effects of past injustices no longer persist or do not require rectification. Justice requires not only the ceasing and desisting of injustice, but also requires either punishment or reparation for injuries and damages inflicted for prior wrongdoing. The essence of injustice is the redistribution of gains earned through the perpetration of injustice. If restitution is not made and reparations not instituted to compensate for prior injustices, those injustices are in effect rewarded. And the benefits such rewards conferred on the perpetrators of injustice will continue to draw interest, to be reinvested, and to be passed on to their children, who will use their inherited advantages to continue to exploit the children of the victims of the injustices of their ancestors. Consequently, injustice and inequality will be maintained across the generations, as will their deleterious social, economic, and political outcomes. So he says, therefore, it is not enough that blacks forgive whites for their past sins, that they merely forget the past, or that the past, but that they forgive and forget. It is not enough that whites cease and desist their prior injustices and racial discriminatory practices while they retain all advantages those prior injustices and practices afford them. He says, for even under a colorblind, you know, people say that we live in a post-racial society. Anyway, he says, even under a colorblind political and economic regime, they will use their previously accumulated and unredistributed wealth and power to continue to invest to their advantage and to the disadvantage of blacks. So he goes on to say that it is imperative if blacks are to acquire true equality and power relative to whites, then they must demand and give reparation from whites, or that whites, through committed long-term affirmative action, compensate them for their losses due to their prior oppression by whites. Ashe.
Ashe.
Our ancestors saying, you want to close this, you want to get true equality, and they're going to have to pay for what they did. They're going to have to pay for what they took. The people, the land, the resources, they're going to have to pay for that. If you really want to, if we're really trying to close this racial wealth gap. Now, Dr. Amos Wilson's not saying sit around and wait for it. That's not what he's saying. He's saying pursue reparations, but in the meantime, we need to also be aggregating our resources together, pooling our resources together to build our own communities and solve our own problems. So I just don't want people to know he's not saying wait on reparations. He's just making a case for reparations, saying that, look, if we want to close this racial wealth gap, then we must receive reparations. But he's not in any means telling us to wait on it. Okay, I want to make that clear. But anyway, y'all, let's move on. Page 472. Some facts about what black wealth ownership. Let's each take a bullet and let's each take a bullet or two.
Okay.
African American. Oh.
Thanks, Sid.
African Americans have a mean net worth of only $27,230 compared to $116,661 for whites. On a per capita basis, blacks have a net worth of $9,359 versus $44,980 for whites. 76.58% of white households had assets which earned at financial institutions, but only 44.48% of blacks had this type of wealth.
Moreover, those blacks who had interest earning assets at financial institutions had mean holdings worth $5,008 compared to $21,748 for white households. Blacks have only 766 per capita in interest earning assets at financial institutions compared to $6,421 for whites.
Brother T.
African Americans had only 1/3 as much equity in housing as did white Americans. Greatest inequality existed for ownership of stocks and mutual funds, equity in business, and IRAs and kiosks. The greatest inequality in home ownership of assets between blacks and whites involved the ownership of consumption-oriented assets such as motor vehicles, housing, and regular checking accounts.
Input?
In 1987, blacks owned 424,000 businesses compared to 17,526,000. Wow, business in the nation as a whole. Was that correct? Figure read?
That's right.
Okay. There were only about 14 firms per 1,000 black persons compared to 73 firms per 1,000 persons for the country as a whole.
Wow. Go ahead, Sister Lee.
Oh, okay. Blacks were 12.1% of the population in 1987, but owned only 2.4% of the businesses. Blacks owned businesses together generated receipts of only $22.8 billion compared to receipts of $11,893 billion for all businesses. Black businesses accounted for only 0.19% of total receipts. Black businesses had total receipts of $775 for each black person, compared to $49,310 per person for the economy as a whole.
You might as well
Yes. I guess read the last one, right? If you're saying,
Lily might as well, Sister
In the selected services sector, black-owned businesses generated only $7.1 billion out of a total of $996 billion. This amounted to only 0.7% of total receipts. Wow.
All right, so then that brings us to another chart where he's giving us receipts. And this chart, family, is on page 473. All right, and he's giving us the receipts in billions of dollars in 1991. That says a number of firms in the 1000s in 1987. I'm sorry, 1987 by industry. So he's looking at the different industries: construction, manufacture, transportation, I guess, and public utilities, wholesale trade, retail trade, finance, insurance, real estate, selected services, and other industries. And he's showing us the receipts from the black firms or black-owned companies versus those of the total number in the receipts of the total, the number of total firms. Okay, and so he gives us, like, if you go across, he gives it to us by B over T, which is the number of black firms divided by the number of total firms. Then he gives us the receipts per firm. And then at the end, he gives us the gap between the receipts and then the gap between the firms. I think that's what I'm seeing. Correct me if I'm wrong, y'all. I think that's what I'm. Okay. So I don't know if you guys want to go over this chart or if it was good enough to just flash it, but the source is from Commerce Bureau of Census, Survey of Minority-Owned Businesses, Black, 1987, and the Statistical Abstract of the United States, 1990, Table 859 and Table 521. I think at your leisure, people can go and check it out, at their leisure.
Exactly.
So move 474, y'all.
All right, 474. Kick it off, one of the brothers, Brother Knowledge. You've been quiet.
Brother Knowledge got out of there.
He always does this. He like disappears, like he comes in, says like, "Hey," and then he leaves. Oh my God, like he literally just left, sis. Would you?
Man,
this you scared of?
Brother Knowledge came in there. He introduced himself, and he got us all pumped up with the words. He got out of there. He got out of there.
Well, go ahead, Brother Impu.
All right. According to Swinton, quote, the BT Inequality Index suggests that Black businesses generated only about 1.6% as much revenue as would be required to have ownership parity as measured by receipts.
Wow.
A similar ratio was developed for the number of Black-owned businesses relative to the Black American population. For example, in construction, the 37,000 Black-owned firms comprise 53.9% of the firms required for parity. The BT numbers clearly indicate a high degree of inequality in the number of firms across the whole of the industry/services spectrum. Moreover, there is evidence that during the 12 Reagan and Bush years, progress toward parity in business ownership was retarded, and that the African American business sector may have generated a relatively smaller share of total business receipts, despite an overall rise in the per capita receipts during that period.
Wow.
Interesting. I would like to know what it was before Bush, or during the Carter administration, and the Ford administration. Although the growth rate of Black-owned firms, 37% in 1987, here we go, was substantially higher than the average of all American firms, 26.2%. These firms comprise only about 3.1% of the total U.S. business enterprises and account for only 1% of sales/receipts of all U.S. firms. Only 17% of African American firms have paid employees.
Wow.
This may be, yes. This may
I think
be,
it's lower now.
Yeah, I think it is.
It's lower. Mm-hmm.
This may be in great part due to the fact that not only do Black-owned firms tend to be relatively small, but that 94% of African American firms are organized as sole proprietorships. Excuse me. The remaining 6% consisting of 3% partnerships and 3% sole corporations. Approximately 63% of African American firms are concentrated in the services and retail trade industries.
I wanted to point that out. That and it hasn't. I heard a statistic which I need to find, but it hasn't changed much as far as our ownership. So he said that it's concentrated in the services and retail. So that's what I said before. Remember we were talking about, like, we sell a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
Sell a lot, but as far as other type of businesses like grocery stores and things of that nature, pharmacies, we don't have those type of things. Laundromats, you know what I mean? Like phone companies. We don't have transportation companies. We don't have those, but everyone is selling something.
Right.
And it's still the same way today. So we need to look at that when we think about opening businesses. We have to start opening businesses as far as need, as opposed to because I want to, because I'm not necessarily sure that Big Mama might have wanted to have a laundromat, but she realized that that was a source of income that was necessary. You know what I mean? That's not a fun business. I mean, you know what I mean? Who wants cleaners or something like that? Okay, right. But it is certain things that are needed.
Yeah, it fills a need. Absolutely, Sister
Right.
Elena. Absolutely.
Funeral, things like that. My great grandparents had.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I got
remember the Jeffersons.
We had food and shea butter and t-shirts down packed, Sister Elena. I'm tired. Everybody has everybody. And we sell food. We have that down packed. So I'm with you, Sister Alima. What do we need? You know, we need furniture. We need our carpenters so that we don't have to run to Bob's discount.
We need our welders. Where are our welders at? Where are our IT technicians, our electricians, our HVAC? Like, where are these people? We know they're out here. We know they're out here. You know what I mean? But if we were more organized, man, we'd be a powerful.
You know what? But you understand. I don't know how it is in Baltimore, how it's all over. But I know here in Baltimore, we had the high school
breaking up.
I can't hear you, brother T. Is it me, Sister Alima?
I can hear him. He just
chopped. No, we can't.
Yeah, you sound like a robot. Sound like auto tune.
Must be my auto tune. I'm saying now. Well, I'm gonna try to get through this. If I am, just let me know so I'll stop. I know in Baltimore, the biggest thing we had was West Side Skill Center.
Yes. West
Side Skill Center was the high school, the trade center to business or college pipeline. And the late 90s, the Skill Center was closed, and it had carpentry. You had opportunity to learn electricity. And I remember in high school, we used to have these trades. We had Carver Technical, Mervo, we had Poly. So you had these schools that taught the technical trades.
Carver.
So you had Carver. So you see how these things were iced out our communities.
Right.
Because people knew.
I was going to say that I'm alarmed at the men that I know, that young men that don't even have a hammer. I'm like, you don't have a hammer.
You're right.
That's facts.
Own a hammer.
That's facts. You don't know how many of my homeboys have came to get me, and I'm sorry to cut your wisdom, brother. But speaking on that, have came to my house to ask me, can I help them with something? Like, sis, I know you got hammers and screwdrivers and all of that. Like, I just need you to. I'm like, what? I gotta go ahead, man. Grown ass man, put this IKEA shit together. Like, this is sad.
Yeah, but they come from. We've been totally iced out. Those things used to be in our communities.
That's right, brother.
So the whole thing now, we have to go back to putting them back into existence. Because I remember John Henry Clark watching some of his wisdom when I was on the video. He says, we can't even manufacture underwear. Something that simple. Something we all wear. And like you just said, Sister Alima, we can't even bang a hammer to a nail. You know, it's just that simple. The simple things that used to build our communities have been wiped out on purpose, and we sat down and allow it to happen.
That's right.
Absolutely. Brother T, I just want to add this to the discourse. Morgan State University. And I'm getting ready to say something. Y'all know that's my alma mater, and you guys know I teach over there part-time. We pride ourselves in the number of Black engineers that we graduate year after year. I mean, you can go to morgan.edu and go to the search bar and type in School of Engineering, and you'll see that we pride ourselves in the number of Black engineers that we produce and the number of Black female engineers that we produce. But the million-dollar question is, what have we produced? So year after year, you have these industrial engineers coming out, mechanical engineers coming out, electrical engineers coming out, computer engineers coming out, architectural engineers coming out. What have we built for Black people? And I'm not saying that there haven't been organized that have gone out there and have done great things. I have several people in my mind right now that I think of that have gone out there, gotten jobs, making $200,000 a year, working for government contractors, Lockheed Martin, Black & Decker, Northrop Grumman, the NSA and NASA, and they're doing wonderful things, wondrous things. But what have we built for Black people? With all of those engineers, why don't we have a cell phone company?
Exactly, sis.
I teach wireless communications. Hold up, I want to show you guys this. This is the class I teach, and Sister Alima probably said she's going to take out this daggone book. I'm going to show Sister Alima this book a million times when I had to prepare my lectures. I taught this class, and I had lectures, PowerPoint lectures. I can tell you how cell phones work. I can tell you the ins and outs, how they encrypt it, how they process it, how they convert analog to digital. I can talk about the different mechanisms that they use to deal with, when you're sending a signal, you have scattering, you have reflection, you have diffraction, and all sorts of stuff. How they convert the signal to electromagnetic waves to get it from the transmitter. I can teach that. Why don't we have a cell phone? Why haven't we produced a cell phone?
Can you jailbreak cell phones, sis? Because you can make some good money like that on the side. I'm telling you, I know a lot of sisters that's like, yo, queen, I'm saying I just want to see his phone for like 6 months.
I'm not fooling with y'all. You already know I'm still on probation.
I'm the hack queen over here.
Y'all gonna have me walking out, man, tomorrow on the news like this with my hands behind on YouTube, said you breast no cell phones. I get off October 28th. I get off this year, 2018. But all jokes aside, it's just, you know, I'm sitting here wondering, like, why haven't we produced a cell phone?
That's right.
Why don't we have our own cellular companies? You buy space, you pull your resources together and buy towers like Sprint, T-Mobile, Verizon. A lot of them share the same towers. Why don't we start a cell phone company and start renting space on some of these towers and get our engineers together to develop, you know, a plan, a cellular, you know, map out the cellular regions.
When I used to build airplane spars, the people who drew out the plans were engineers, and then they literally drew out the plans for how you're supposed to build different parts of the planes, from the engine to the wings to the fuselage. So like you said, we have those type of minds. These were Black people. So we have these type of minds who can build freaking planes and things like that for other people. So imagine what we could do for ourselves.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, all our jobs are through other people.
That's right.
So all our gifts and things are, you know, used to enrich other cultures other than ourselves.
That's right, sis.
Absolutely, and that's because we don't have a, you know, our educational process didn't induce in us, you know, that philosophical core of like self-determination and self-sufficiency. That wasn't a philosophical core that was induced in us.
That's right.
We were taught workers. We were conditioned to be servants to and for the dominant society. And that is why African-centered education is very important, because it's a do for self program. You know, it's a do for self program. It's a self-determination program and a self-sufficient, self-reliant program. And that's what African-centered education is all about, inducing in us or inculcating within us an African worldview. Right?
Boom.
Education that will reaffirm, they call it the African self-consciousness.
Yes.
That's what it's reaffirming your African self, or strengthening and reaffirming, your African self-consciousness, and inculcating within us an African worldview so that we can survive and prosper in our environment. And that's what African-centered education is meant for us to. Right now, as you stated, Sister Camille, the reason why we take our talents and our skills and we run to the dominant society, which is dominated and controlled by Europeans, is because we are essentially African people with a European consciousness and a European survival thrust. Okay. And that is what is wrong with Black people. And that is why we rush to go build their empire. You get what I'm saying? And to take our talents and skills and go out there to them, because we've been inculcated with that sort of mentality because of our miseducational process. I don't even like to call it education. It's a miseducational process that each of us have undergone. Absolutely. Miseducation. So that is why we do that, sis. But let's move on, y'all, because I want to move down to Lanier Henderson. And he wrote an article entitled Empowerment Through Enterprise, African-American Business Development, which was published in the State of Black America in 1993. He says that empowerment is a complex and comprehensive concept consisting of at least 5 interrelated components. Let's read through each of these really fast. I'll take the first one, and I actually have an asterisk next to it. The formation and strategic goals and objectives by individuals and institutions that focus on creation, expansion, distribution, and the utilization of human, financial, technological, and information resources, particularly for a given group or organization.
The mobilization of those resources through strategic interaction with individuals, institutions within and beyond the current range or field of interaction to achieve even higher levels of resource attainment.
As resource mobilization generates higher levels of resource attainment, entrepreneurs build skills, capacities, and networks that position them for even greater resource development and diversification. This is the economic concept of multiplier effect, applied to psychological, socio-economic, and institutional outcomes, as well as financial consequences.
As resource development and diversification occurs, entrepreneurs are able to transact, contract, and interact across more and more community, financial, institutional, and other boundaries, both within and beyond their own locations, further extending their networks, skills, and resource base, and
the enabling and building of the individual, organizational, and institutional network of which the empowered organization in part. In other words, when one force is empowered, most forces connected with it are actually or potentially empowered as well.
That's a fact. And so he goes on to say that the concept of empowerment for African-American entrepreneurs includes a two-dimensional imperative: A, conception, development, and enrichment of economically and socially productive and enterprising organizations. All right, so we have to develop, and I mean, this is, I'm telling y'all, when I say that Dr. Amos Wilson gives us the blueprint, he gives us the blueprint. So he said conception, idea, then you have development, enrichment of economically and socially productive and enterprising organizations. So we have to have the ideas, we have to develop our ideas, and then we have to organize. All right, and then he says B, mutually enriching and collectively productive relationships between African-American enterprise organizations and African-American individuals, households, and communities. Now he says that empowerment begins at home. I have this underlined. A major dilemma faced by African-American business persons is the fact that in the virtual absence of a deep and abiding sense of racial solidarity, they cannot rely on the full loyal patronage of their ethnic community. Remember, because we sit in our dollars, I think you told me, Brother T, that the dollar only stays in the community for what, 16 hours before it goes out? I think he told me hours to 16 to 17 hours. So he says that we cannot rely on the full loyal patronage of their ethnic community. They, unlike many other business persons, cannot assume that they will be more or less automatically supported by a substantial portion of their community based on common ethnic cultural bonds. In fact, Black business persons must, and then necessary, engage in a losing battle with other ethnic business persons for the business support of their own people. We go to people we'll go to people outside of us faster. Yeah, always. So it says, even though African-American business persons earn the highest percentage of sales and receipts in areas where the demographic concentration of the African-American population is the highest, there is still a glaring disparity between the proportion of African-Americans in the state's population and the revenues generated by African-American owned firms. And that's all that I have highlighted. If you guys want to add anything to what I just stated.
No, that was a wow.
Yeah, but then he gives us an example. He says that in Washington, D.C., right in the District of Columbia, where there is 69% population African-American, he said Black-owned firms generated only 6.3% of the total sales and receipts in Washington, D.C., even with the population at that time, which was 69%.
That's amazing.
Wow. That's actually a high percentage in regards to Africans in the Americas in business. A vast majority percentage of the Africans in business survive off of 2% of the African population as well. So between 2 and 10%. And the survivability and likelihood of a Black business in the Americas is 10 years, regardless to geographical location, taxation, and forget about it if you're in one of these Commonwealth states. You understand what I'm saying? So, when it speaks about conception, like the buy-in has to be there, and also the agreement from conception, because like Sister Lynn was speaking about solving problems, businesses and entrepreneurs exist within the framework of a society to solve problems, to fill a need, to fill a void. So when we're looking around in the society to actually see, what problems can be solved, we have to have the buy-in when it starts to talk about individual, family, and collective. That if Dr. Maat is going to open up this laundromat that we say we need, we have to have the buy-in from a vast majority of the population within the community saying that we're going to support this, no matter what. You understand what I'm saying? So then we can go from conception, to these levels that we're speaking about in regards to, expansion and all of these things. And then also, reminding people that your children and your children's children are going to be able to benefit what we do off of today. You see what I'm saying? And another point that I wanted to make is because our underworld does not and is not fortified by our overworld, meaning, these other ethnicities have an underworld buy-in. The Yakuza, the Triad, any of these other places that have a mafia.
Right.
They control the overworld. You see what I'm saying? So, they have these shops, they have the Koreatown, they have Chinatown and all these places because they have an underworld where nobody messes with that. You see what I'm saying? So there's a component that exists with African people with our ancestral realm that we're no longer including in our affairs in regards to our business, in regards to our education, in regards to our health, wellness, and well-being. So as long as we neglect the other world, there's no protection in this realm that we currently operate.
That's amazing.
Well said.
That is.
Well
And with
said.
that being said, we can't overlook. I always mention this part when we discuss, Dr. Wilson, is the psychology of the Black mind, what has happened to us mentally.
Right.
We can even, I dare even say spiritually, what has happened to us. With that being said, because you look at other groups and it's like, wait a minute, why, like the brother just said, how can they, even in the underworld, still remain connected? Dealt with. I'm not saying that the devils didn't mess with them, because they did to some degree, but it was something about the darker skinned race tact and did a mental work upon. And here we are discussing it in 2018, trying to figure out what's the issue. And it's definitely a psychological issue as well that we need to address.
I agree, brother. I agree.
And that's not separate from our spiritual, that mind that exists is universal among African concepts. If you go into one of these places, you go into one of these Chinese restaurants or these nail shops or whatever, you see an altar in there. They're venerating their ancestors. So before they have two booths, they're centrally located a spot or automatically when they come to a place of where they're going to venerate their ancestors. You understand what I'm saying? So, we have to understand that component, that psychological component is linked to the spiritual component because they are one in the same in regards to how we actualize our experience and how we actualize our worldview, as Dr. Maat was bringing out earlier. You see what I'm saying? So our worldview is contingent upon our participatory veneration of our ancestors on one side to take care of what's happening and actualizing on the other side. So we're in a situation where we're devoid of that, and we're seeking to be on the same level playing field with people who are doing that. You see what I'm saying? They got us, venerating European ancestors, and we're thinking we're going to get free through that type of oppressive, dominating, anti-African culture. You see what I'm saying? So we were working in reverse. So we're venerating somebody's ancestors. We're empowering somebody's ancestors. We're fortifying someone's ancestors. This is not ours.
Exactly.
You understand what I'm saying? So that understanding of having to come back to who we are as African people, that's why I love the title, The Resurgence of the African Mind. Because we've been here before, so now we can resurgence. We can take a look back, and what Baba Amos Wilson provides us is an introspective look. If we talk about 1987, look at what our ancestors were doing in 1887. You see what I'm saying? In 1787, and look at the amount of wealth and amount of land that they own, and what their priorities were. and our priorities are not the same in 2018. You understand what I'm saying? We could look at a 200 to 300 year time span and see where our priorities are. You understand what I'm saying? So, it wasn't just like when they started to talk about the entrepreneurs, necessity, when they said financial consequences, if we don't do, this is what happens. We're not in that level of imperative. We don't have that particular type of buy-in in regards, if Dr. Maat says, hey, we ain't doing mail track no more, what does that mean for us as African people? You understand what I'm saying? Like if Sister Lily Laforte said, I'm not writing another book anymore. Y'all don't appreciate me. I'm going to take my work where it's appreciated. What does that do? What type of detriment does that set for African people? This is the mindset in which we have to approach everything that we do, because it's a reflection of everything that we are. You understand what I'm saying? So we really have to look at that and really bring that in. If Sister Camille say, hey, I'm not doing drummer lessons no more music, where are you going to go? You understand what I'm saying? So when we start to look at that, then we reverse it on the other end of the value spectrum and say, hey, we have to ensure that these businesses, these products and services, whatever they are, because once you get somebody with that entrepreneurial mindset, all you have to do is switch the products. So if these folks are out here selling T-shirts and shea butter, they can sell these other things too. You understand what I'm saying? Hey, we about to do this cell phone thing. We see you good at these particular skills. Can you push this cell phone? Can you get the word out? Whoa, whoa, whoa. You see what I'm saying? So you just change the product, building that will to win, that will to understand how important it is for us to be in the business of sales. Because if you're not in the business of sales, you're being sold too. You understand what I'm saying? So we know that. You see what I'm saying? So now we have to deal with this imperative and this push in regards to what we're selling and who we're selling for. So they got our children from kindergarten to college. So by the time they're in college, they know they ain't working for us because they ain't seen nothing work with us. So then it had too many interfaces from kindergarten to what success looks like. So going to work for them is successful in their minds unless we intercede. You understand what I'm saying? Absolutely. And plant that seed and push that forward. You see what I'm saying? So only going along with the psychological programming that we gave them ever since they were children. You see what I'm saying? So changing that construct, changing that, belief system, if you will, in regards to seeing yourself first and only. You see what I'm saying? Like it's this, well, are we dealing with this, educational system or miseducational system for our benefit or for our detriment? And the same with the economic system, same with the social system, and the same with all of these things right here. Y'all know I'll be going.
That's true. That all of that you're saying is true. And then it makes me think of when people criticize those who work and tell them that, we need to be self-sufficient and this, that, and the third. And when we look at the data and we see where we really are economically, financially, people are not in the position to work for themselves. We have to think about that. So when you chastise a person for doing what it is the system has structured and allowed them to do, it's hypocritical. And when we don't have a system that's put into play to benefit everybody so that everyone can be in a position to be self-sufficient, then until then, we have to be quiet and let people make it the way that they make it. That's the goal. That's what we need to be trying to focus on. What is it that we can do so that more of us can become self-sufficient? And the first thing, as we said, is figuring out a way to establish some type of generational wealth.
Generational wealth. I mean, Judah Knowledge said it perfectly. He had a lot of jewels in that and what he was saying, but he says our children do not want to work because they haven't seen anything we did that works. And we have to change that paradigm. But that's the truth. And we have to make some changes. And Sister Lima, you hit the nail on the head. You have to actually do what you have to do until we get to that point. But we got to learn. We have to come together in the meanwhile until we get it together.
That's right.
Something.
Dr. Wilson, in his lecture, The Crisis of Black Leadership, he talks about European dominance over us. And Dr. Maat was talking about this earlier, but he says, why don't these problems never end? Because the dominant, every time we do find a way to come together to maybe break those generational curses or whatever that they've placed upon us. It's like the dominant culture. And that's another thing. We have to realize, we have to come to the realization first that we are the dominated, you know, so that we can begin. You know what I'm saying? We just have to come to that realization. I fought that for a long time. Oh no, we kings and queens. But you look, like the brother just put in the book here, you look at the facts on these pages, on these charts, it shows that we are definitely the dominated. But anyway, so once we come to that realization, say, you know what? Or excuse me, let me go back. I'm losing my train of thought. But once we realize that they always perpetuate problems upon problems for us to try to come up and out. I mean, it's like, man, as soon as I get out of this situation, wait, where did this one come from? It's like systematically they know what to place in our community. And Dr. Wilson in this lecture said, in this particular lecture, was talking about the crisis of Black leadership. He said, and this was 1994 or 93, I believe, when he spoke. And he was saying that we're at a point now, we should be able to look at leadership from 90 years ago and where we are presently and say, you know what? This is what needs to change in our Black leadership. We've been having Black bodies with a white face, okay, running things and just operating in their program. And now it's time to just totally, you know, separate ourselves. And that's past time. Y'all know that. I know I'm preaching to the choir. That's past. It's time for us to really do some organic leadership thinking, you know, like he was saying in the book here, and just moving forward. No whites allowed. I don't care what nobody say. No whites allowed. I dare say no Hispanics allowed. I mean, it's time. If you ain't talking about Africa, if you ain't talking about African spiritual systems, we need to reevaluate some things on people coming into our groups.
Exactly.
That's where I'm at with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Dr. Amos Wilson, I mean, brother, you and I we were in sync, man. I was just watching his lecture. I watched it twice, the falsification of African consciousness. And he again spoke on, you know, Black leadership. And he said that we need to learn we need to learn to discriminate again. Just like you just said, brother.
Yes.
We need to learn that discriminate is okay. And being exclusive is okay.
Exactly.
You know, saying how, you know, Black leadership, they guilt you into not discriminating, you know, but everybody else discriminates but us. You know, Amos Wilson was saying that that's a aspect of the human brain. You should
survival.
You know, exactly. Right. It's what the human brain does. It's what we do, like you said, to survive. You know, but he said that you have these Black leaders who make you feel guilty when you discriminate. They make you feel guilty when you are exclusive. You know,
and other groups of people. You know,
absolutely, absolutely. But that's
like with all these marches and things going on, you had, you know, people talking about that. I heard some young Black people on Twitter talking about that, you know, well, we need white people to help us in the struggle. I was like, I almost smashed my phone on the ground. What are you talking about? You know, they have no concept of history, man.
None.
It's really, really sad.
They have what Dr. Amos Wilson talks about in the developmental psychology of the Black child, a high dependency. A high dependent mentality. That's right. So if you have a mentality, there's no way that you're going to be thinking about for self.
Right. Exactly.
You know, and that a high dependent mentality comes from powerlessness, and then powerlessness comes from poverty. Right.
Right.
And then the way we're socialized based on our socio-economic and social political status. So all of that stuff goes hand in hand. So we have a high dependent mentality. So like you said, Sister Camille, I'm not surprised that they're like, yo, we need white folks. You know, we need white folks.
How you gonna call the people that's oppressing you to free you? I don't understand that. I'm like, do you get that concept? You know,
absolutely.
I was like, man, I said, y'all need to read some Revolution. I don't know anything, man.
And Sister Camille,
they said that like it was a brilliant idea. It was like, you know what?
Sister Camille, think about the fact that we've always like Savior, sis. Savior.
Yeah, man.
You know, Jesus.
Right? Jesus was in everything.
Jesus was depicted as our Savior. Then when you're young and you're looking at all these Superman movies and Batman
so
movies
and
all that, you always had a white superhero. And then in school, look who's educating our babies. So in their minds, they're thinking the only people that could save us are white folk. We have a white savior mentality, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's the plantation mindset. You know, still you're just in a city. That's a plantation. Still running around like slaves on concrete.
It never left, sis. Plantation mentalities. It never left, sis. But come on, y'all. We got 14 pages to come through. 5 of those are like 5 or 6 of these are charts. The next section is business ownership, investments, key to Black wealth. I'm gonna say that again: business ownership and investment, keys to Black wealth. He says, in contrast to some of the indices of Black American social economic progress since the 1960s, such as increases in the number of high-ranking Black professionals in private industry and government, there has been little progress made toward equalizing the economic status of Blacks and whites. Alarmingly, according to the Census Bureau data collected in 1992, economic inequality between the two groups has continued to widen. He says in 1992, the income of $21,761 was just 55.3% of the median white family income, which was $39,320. This disparity is insignificant part reflects comparatively high levels of unemployment and lower average earnings when employed of Blacks. Inequality of wealth ownership between Blacks and whites also accounts significantly for this difference. So he's basically saying, family, that the Black-white gap is widening based on the lack of business ownership, high unemployment, and low earnings within the Black community. This chart on page 476, I'm going to flash it to you just in case you want to pause it and check it out. That displays the Black and white share of wealth per capita in 1992, the interest earning, the stock mutual funds, home equity, and rental property. The source is from the National Urban League, State of Black America, which was published in January of 1994. So family, go take a look at that at your leisure. Then on page 77 through page 480, he lists the top 78 Black enterprises. All right, he says industrial service 100 companies and selected others abstracted from Black enterprise in June of 1997. So he gives the ranking, he lists the company and the type of business and their sales, which is listed in millions of dollars. So you can flip through these. This is page, I know my stuff is all marked up, guys, because I actually read this stuff. I read through the charts just to look at the numbers, but this is page 477, page 478 and 479. Again, this was the Black Enterprise magazine published in June 1997, okay?
Right.
Take a look at that family opportunity. I hear some knocking, getting ready to mute someone. So take a look at that family when you get an opportunity. On page 481, he provides us with a summary Black enterprises. He lists like the total sales, the total staff that they have from 1994 to 1997. And then at the page of page 482, 10 employment leaders. And I believe these are all Black owned and operated companies. But I have an asterisk, Brother T, next to Levon Hawkins Urban City Foods LLC. It says Baltimore, Maryland. In 1996, it says that he hired 390 employees. He had 1,390 employees. And I thought about Checkers, Brother T, and I also thought about, you know, how some of his Checkers were turned into enterprises. So I have an asterisk next to that. But the top 10 Black employment leaders at this particular time, I don't know if it's Black though. I see Levon Hawkins. I don't know if it says Johnson Publishing Company. I'm not sure. I don't know if this is, I believe this is Black owned. And then at the bottom, he shows us a table of the Black Enterprise 100's 25 years of growth. So family, this is, if you want to take a look or you want to pause this and kind of go through it, you can at your own leisure, but we're going to move on because we have 7 more pages to cover. And I definitely want to read page 84 through 86, jobs versus ownership. I think that this box 19-1 is very, very important.
Yes.
And a matter of fact, we can actually go there unless you guys saw something on page 43 that you want to discuss.
No, you can go ahead, sis.
We can go ahead? Okay. One of the brothers, lead us with jobs versus ownership. And I guess we'll take turns with
slavery, colonialism, neo-colonialism, and political economic subordination condition dependent people to expect to be provided employment, sustenance, and supervision by those on whom they depend. Their conditions of dependency, especially if long, intense, and pervasive, understandably impair and delimit their initiative, self-direction, self-determination, and self-fulfillment. For under oppression, these tendencies in the dependent are restricted or punished by their oppressors. Under such oppression, the dependent often utilize apathy, narrowness of vision, and range as survival mechanisms. Enterprise is the special prerogative and preserve of their masters or of outsiders. The spirit of enterprise and the dependent, their self-confidence, the essential aspects of entrepreneurship are systematically militated against them by their masters, who greedily seek to reap all of the fruits and profits from any and all productive material undertakings and labor. Therefore, the dependent are only of value to their masters as laborers, servants, and consumers, not as entrepreneurial competitors. Consistently, they subsist primarily through jobs supplied by their masters. They are thus conditioned to work for others who own and manage the enterprises. Thus, the dependent become inveterate job seekers. Their moribund spirit of enterprise motivates them to secure their successful through constantly beseeching their masters to provide them with jobs, opportunity, job creation, job training, affirmative action, quotas. Success and security for the dependent are one of the fantasy of rising to the highest ranks in the workshops owned by their masters or by people other than themselves.
We were talking about that.
They have lost in their ability to create their own employment opportunities, to own their own workshops and master their own enterprises. Perhaps they have lost even the desire to do these things. The thought too often seems never to occur to them. This reflects the power of the slave plantation, a power that extends over generations. Life and the sustenance require working and maintaining the plantation, succeeding on the plantation. Even after emancipation, the plantation mentality remains fixed, so stubbornly rooted in the consciousness under the intractably influential desire to return to the plantation. That like the desire to return to the womb, it negates or neutralizes parent opportunities to do for self, to be one's own boss, independently create abundance through the creative use of one's own human and material resources.
Can I say something real quick? Can I interrupt you, bro? Hello?
Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to say, we were talking about them reparations. There is no way that they would ever be able to repay us. I'm sitting here thinking about the lives lost early, and you put a value on that life, that 14-year-old young man that has lost hope, and could have been a designer or a musician or a carpenter, or that young woman, with the same aspirations. What price do you place on those heads of persons? As you look and you read and how they gave up their dreams because they saw what was in front of them was only oppression. And so they just gave into that, as the paragraph that you just read. So it's like, how do you really repay us for everything? They would literally have to go straight broke to pay us back for all the lives that they've damaged. I'm not even talking about the folks that they've murdered and killed, babies that were killed in the womb, let alone the folks that were born and, and work for them that they paid little wages to, far less than they should have gotten. It's just ridiculous. So it's almost like a total takeover that we need to have happen. I'm just saying, I don't know how y'all feel about that. When we talk about reparations, that word shouldn't even be in our vocabulary. There's a whole nother word. It's called takeover. There's no way that they can repay us for what they've done.
Oh yeah, I agree. I agree with you. That is no amount of money that they could give us to wash that, to wash that history. You get what I'm saying, or to atone. That's the word I was looking for. To atone for what they did. I don't think it was no amount of money. I agree 100% with you. The lives that was lost, the wealth that was destroyed. There's no amount of money that could atone for that. However, I do believe that they need to do something. Something.
Right.
Something.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. I totally agree. Yes.
Yeah.
I just had to say it was on my heart when he was reading. I'm like, I got to say this. Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
Has already showed us, if we don't have some type of political body to represent us as a people, we'll never get reparations. 40-something million black people can scream all they want about reparations, but who's representing us? Who is going to draw up the proper documents and present it?
I think that Dr. Claude Anderson did draw up some documents. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brother Tuola.
I mean, he may have by himself, but what I'm saying is we need a governmental body, not one person. Like one person throughout history has always tried to argue the case for reparations.
And they have.
You said we need a body.
Like you said, why the Jews and the Koreans and all those other people got reparations is because they had governmental bodies to represent them. That's why they got reparations. Not because they demanded that they wanted it. That's not the way it works.
Agreed. I mean, there are some other people doing it. I can't recall their name.
That's a fact. What she said was a daggone fact.
Nail on the head with that. And they have something on the table right now, even as we speak. I think it's HR 1492, if I'm not mistaken. There's something that's on that the Black Caucus is supposed to be implementing, but it's not what Dr. King was talking about us getting our check based off the gifts and the money and the land that was given to other ethnic groups prior. The things when he said we're going to Washington to get our check, but we don't have that systemic mechanism in place, as Sister Lima was talking about to move us to that area. But we have to develop it. We have to develop the political chops and in order to get it done. But there's something in place right now, a reparation paper. But which of our political bodies are going to push it to make sure it happens?
I wanted to ask Sister Alima a question, sis, if you can hear me, because I know you put your mic back on mute. I feel like this, sis, and let me know if you share my same sentiments. We don't change our mentality. They can cut us a damn check all they want, but all we're going to do is hand out money, put our money right in black hands. I'm not saying every last one of us, Sister Alima, but if we're not taught or conditioned on how to spend our money, sis, I believe that if they were to cut checks, we'd be giving out.
I said all the time. I said this all the time. All we would do is make them richer. Without a different mindset, reparations would do us no good. They're not going to benefit us whatsoever. We'd have Range Rovers. We'd have all types of houses that ain't paid for. We'd have all types of clothes and shoes, and we wouldn't have anything worth any type of value.
No,
I don't think mindset. We have to understand what to do with money and what wealth is and what it looks like.
Absolutely.
And maybe it shouldn't come in the terms of money.
Right. Like, that's what I was going to say.
And in terms of what I was mentioning earlier about economist Sandy Durkee said maybe it should be given to it in bonds. free education. And we talked about earlier in our
contract for businesses.
Right. Back in our chapters, we remember that in 1838, Georgetown University sold 273 slaves in order to keep their building, to keep their school open. 273 slaves kept that school open. So you're telling me that's not the first time that happened. That means they owe us free education.
Right, and those slaves should own that school.
That's right. Should own that school. And the descendants of that slave should own that school.
That's right.
So we should have free education. As Sandy Garrity says, baby bonds should be given to every Black child that's born, because that $50,000 closes that gap.
$50,000 ain't gonna cut it.
It's not gonna cut it. But who has $50,000 today in cash or have a bond for their child?
But I'm just saying, I just don't think that's enough.
It's not enough. Along with free education, government contracts, in order for us to have state Black developers. These things are things that must come as collective. It can't be just one thing. But giving us a $50,000 check, we would have a Range Rover in the drive-through. We would have big screen TVs and maybe things we wouldn't need. So these other things that giving us that opportunity to make sure we make some moves, free education, government contracts, making sure our communities have the viable instruments is need. But we have to come together to build it up. And it's not going to be the HR 40 commission that may do it. But we need that political organization to push for it. And we don't have it. We don't have politicians that have our favor or our interest in mind today.
Right. We have to get politicians. We have to stop letting the dominant society choose who our politicians are, who people are that speak for us. Because the people that are out there do not speak to the Black community at all. Those are all what they're talking about is intersectionality and all that kind of stuff that has nothing to do with us, our growth as a people. That's more to our detriment.
You're right.
That's right.
So we have to learn to not, as a group, learn, when they put people before us, they're like, that's not who we're supposed to be, voting for and carrying on about. They keep putting all these people in place that have nothing, that have no, they don't care anything about us as a people.
Because that's who, like you said, sis, they're putting them in front of us. So in order for us to have a political body, we have to have our own elections. We have to come up with our own candidates. They can't be a part of that.
Right. It has
to be something that we set up exclusively and then come to them once we're set up and like, hey, this is our governmental body and this is what the fuck we want. But until we're just a disorganized group of people with a bunch of ideas, we get some type of governmental body. That's all we will ever be. We'll just have these conversations. We'll go to debates. We'll read new books. We'll go to lectures, but we'll never get anything accomplished. That is the basis.
Agreed.
Done as long as wherever we go, even if you want to go repatriate, that is the basis.
Agreed.
Organization.
Absolutely. I remember Kwame Nkrumah said that this organization is the greatest weapon against us. This organization. That's a fact, Sister Alima.
How do you think they were able to get Tulsa up and running? They were organized like a motherfucker.
Yes, they were.
They were on there.
And self-interested.
That's right. They self-invested. Right. Exactly.
Right. You didn't have anybody working against it. Most definitely. Definitely agreed. Good stuff.
Brother Knowledge Born. Are you still there, brother?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. For the record, I'm not holding up the conversation, okay? I just want y'all to know.
Because it's 9 o'clock.
I'm doing my reading. You know what I'm saying? But y'all know I can get into all of that.
Drop that knowledge, brother. Drop that knowledge.
But I know we got 5 pages left. You understand? And I'm looking at the hour, and I know Dr. Maat don't.
Brother Knowledge said, "Go ahead and get it done."
About the time frame.
We holding it up.
Go ahead, Brother Knowledge. He said it's not him this time. Go ahead, Brother
Normally
Knowledge.
It's me. Y'all know.
Please continue.
Go ahead and kick us off.
These passages speak to contemporary conditions of job-oriented Africans in America and across the African diaspora, poverty-stricken, powerless, through possessors of overwhelming human resources and occupants of lands blessed with abundant material possibilities. Africans are job seekers in their own communities, territories, economic markets, and lands, properties whose ownership and economic exploitation they have ceded to aliens. For them, jobs are more important than ownership. The high cost of jobs. We are, of course, mindful of the fact that African Americans are job oriented mainly as the result of having been conditioned to servitude and dependency by those who monopolize the ownership of the economy. However, the fact that Black Americans own less than 3% of the economy should not blind them to the economic and political advantages of business ownership versus job holding. This is especially applicable to the case where job holding occurs even within African American community markets consisting of businesses which are fully or significantly supported by Black consumer dollars. More specifically, we are referring here to the case to prevalent in African American and African diasporic communities where virtually all of the businesses are owned or managed by aliens. These businesses are predominantly, if not exclusively, supported by Blacks, and yet local Blacks seek and may find little employment in them, whereas far more likely than their family members, fellow ethnics, or members of ethnic groups other than local Blacks are employed. Even if local Blacks were the sole employees of these non-Black owned businesses, especially retail businesses, the cost of employing them and maintaining these establishments and businesses is borne by the local Black community. And the cost to the community is relatively high and regressive, further impoverish an already poor community. When the local Black community remains Black-owned firm and business by spending with it, the community, in fact, is paying that business to employ the local residents it hires. When the business owner is a non-resident, i.e. removes all the money he earns from the community and spends it elsewhere, when virtually all of the business expenses are paid to absentee landlords for rent, to non-Black owned wholesalers, who also may have relatively few or no Black employees, to other non-Black firms and professionals as well, to the other persons who provide a variety of services. The local community pays more for the employment of residents by the alien-owned business firms than that business and the goods and services it apparently provides is worth to do it. For instance, suppose a non-Black owned business earns $100,000 per year from sales to its local Black customers, and from that amount it pays to local Black employees a combined total of $20,000 per year. For simplicity, we are ignoring other operating expenses and costs paid to non-Black vendors. In effect, the community is paying the alien merchant $100,000 to hire and to pay two local employees $20,000. Thus, the community spends $100,000 to retain $20,000. The alien merchant walks away with $80,000 to spend in his own community and to support his institutions, traditions, values, and quality of life. Obviously, if the community spent the same $100,000 with a resident, community-owned business, which employs the same two local employees, the $100,000 spent with the community merchant would be retained in it, spent in it, and used to support its community-based institutions, traditions, values, and quality of life. Hence,
and guess what? Hold up, look, it's me, y'all. It's me stopping the flow. He's saying this. He's saying this, but I have a note right here. I said not necessarily if the people aren't African-centered, right? He's saying that this 100,000 will stay in the community. But I said not necessarily if the people or the person that was hired isn't African-centered. They would take that $100,000 and go spend it outside of the community. If so,
Exactly.
Exactly.
All right, but please continue. I just wanted to add that.
That's a great observation. And that the other observation would be that we wouldn't fund a business or support a business in our
Knowledge born?
Oh. Are you breaking up, brother?
Community if it wasn't African.
No. He's saying
that now used to support is.
Got you.
We lost due to knowledge.
Yep.
Okay, so hence the monopolistic ownership of businesses located in the Black community markets cannot be blithely justified in terms of their more provision of goods and services. That
cut me off.
Are you there, Knowledge Born?
Yeah, it cut me off. My bad. I don't know if y'all heard the last thing I said. Not funding a business that wasn't African centered, that didn't share the goals, aims, and objectives of the local community as it was speaking about in regards to, the community institutions, traditions, values, and goals, so to speak.
Right. But he's saying that if the community spent the same $100,000 with the resident community-owned business, which employs the same 2 local employees, then the $100,000 will be spent with community merchant, would be retained in it, spent in it, and used to support its community-based institutions, traditions, values, and quality of life. What I'm saying is these 2 employees, they may work for this community-owned business, but if they aren't themselves African-centered, they'll take their $50,000 a piece and go spend it outside of the community. That's the point that I was trying to drive.
Right.
But go ahead, brother. I had already started reading to goods and services that they provide revitalization.
Okay.
Page 486.
And paying.
Did we lose him again, Sister Camille, or is it my computer?
I think he's there.
Yeah, we lost him.
All right, let me just finish this out because time is of the essence. Revitalization of the community and paying of taxes, and more to point in terms of
and more to the.
It's just brother Knowledge Born. We going, brother.
Yeah.
Come out.
Can y'all hear me?
Come back out and come back in, brother.
All right.
Okay. So it says paying taxes and more to the point in terms of their provision of customarily minimum wage jobs to a relative handful of local residents. This is no substitute, or at best is a poor substitute for a Black residentially owned community or cooperatively owned business, which employs from community residents, buys its goods and services from community and Black owned vendors to whatever extent is possible or reasonable, and spends or invests its earnings or profits in support of other community-owned business and institution. So, brother Knowledge Born, hopefully you won't break up. I'm at ownership of significant equity in businesses.
All right, ownership of significant equity in businesses where it spends its monies for the goods and services they provide should be Black community economic policy applied to both community-based and non-community-based firms. Significant equity should be pursued in large national and multinational corporations, which Black communities support through consumer spending nationally and internationally. Those businesses which resist significant Black equity ownership should not be supported by Black consumers. Local alien-owned businesses which do not leave the bulk of their earnings in the community, which do not support its local institutions and vendors, should not be supported by Black consumers. All empowered nations tax foreign-owned firms and see to it that in some way truly contribute to the enrichment and well-being of the host nation in return for exercising the privilege of doing business there. The Black American nation and African peoples and nations should do no less. The Black community should not shop where it does not own.
Hold up, say that again. Let me put this right here. Go say that again once. The last line. Read that one more time for me. The Black community. Brother Knowledge Born. I don't know what happened.
We're gonna have to get somebody else to read.
The Black community should not shop, does not own.
That's powerful.
That was powerful.
Not shop.
He's trying to talk. Look at him straining.
Where it does not own.
This is hilarious.
Brother Knowledge Born need to go get his Ethernet cord.
No, I think him and Sister Camille switched internet.
Oh man, I'm not fooling with y'all. You know it's past my big time. We had 4 pages. So the case for reparations, Dr. Amos Wilson says the slave experience and white racism has been extremely costly to Black. We kind of touched on that earlier in our discussion. All right. So slave experience and white racism has been extremely costly to Blacks. And Dr. Amos Wilson says that only reparations can economically redeem the injustices of slavery and white supremacy. But as Brother Impool pointed out, there's no amount of money that could pay for what they did to us. All right? So that's the case for reparations. So then he goes on to talk about collective capitalism on page 487. Bear with us, family. We got 3 more pages. He says that collective capitalism refers to a set of institutional relationships wherein the principle of planned coordination is extended across corporate enterprises, firms within firms, into business government relations. So according to Lazarnik, I mess up names all the time, Lazonic, 1991, it says the distinguishing features of collective capitalism are: 1, the organizational integration of a number of distinct firms, i.e. units of financial control in pursuit of a common investment strategy. 2, the long-term integration into the enterprise of personnel below the managerial level. And 3, the cooperation of the state in shaping the social environment to reduce the uncertainty facing private sector investments. The enterprise group is a fundamental institution of collective capitalism. I want to say that again. The enterprise group is a fundamental institution of collective capitalism. In this instance, one or more dominant enterprises or social institutions take the lead as core companies in the planned coordination of a group of subcontractors for the core companies as a means of creating new businesses, strengthening already existing enterprises, and gaining increased market share or predominance in a certain market. All right, so he talks about collective capitalism in this particular section. I don't have anything else highlighted on this page. Does anyone else before I move to 488?
Go ahead, sis.
Okay, so on page 488, he goes on, he closes by saying that state and institutional systems play a key role in collective capitalism by helping to protect the home market, promoting cooperative research and development among business competitors by helping to create and shape an economic and social environment conducive to economic development, and helping to formulate investment strategies and building organizational structures to execute them. All right. So he's saying that state and institutional systems, so all of them are involved in what he calls collective capitalism. Okay. It's collective capitalism. Hold up, and I'm taking my little highlighter. He gives a beautiful example at the top of page 488, where he's talking about this enterprise group in Japan and how this group had got a lot of companies together. They wanted to, what did they want to do? Says at the months, they wanted to enter into the field of aluminum refining. And so what they did was they got a number of companies together to pool their resources. together in order to make it happen. So he was just giving us an example of collective capitalism, just to demonstrate how companies, or how enterprises really work, and how enterprises really consist of like several companies coming together and planning and subcontracting work in order to create new businesses and to gain, share in different markets. All right. So then he ends, I believe this is the last section. Let me turn the page. Yes, it is the last section. He ends with talking about African-American collective capitalism. And he talks about how, the church and the Urban League, and he said the NAACP and National Association of Black Social Workers, he's saying all of these organizations should come together, right, and practice collective capitalism. He's saying that we have these organizations, like we have these institutions, but we all need to come together and make this happen. So he says that the institutional Black church and other large, predominantly Black institutions and organizations, he says, such as colleges and universities, the Urban League, NAACP, National Association of Black Social Workers, along with many organizations and trade groups, as we discussed earlier, can function as a quasi-governmental, as Sister Alima was talking about, quasi-large business enterprise agencies. These institutions, hold up, I just want to say this. Sister Alima, can you imagine, y'all, if all Black ministers got up and talked about how, if all Black ministers preached cooperative economics, where we would be as a collective. Mm-hmm. We need to spend Black dollars with Black people, where we would be. Anyway, exactly. Because these institutions and organizations, much like a federal governmental system, can use their influence to help shape the attitudes, values, and behavior of very large segments of the African American public in ways conducive to attaining its increased loyal commitment to supporting community economic development. All right. As major purchasers of goods and services, they, by contractually committing themselves to the joint procuring of such goods and services from Black-owned firms, can encourage the creation or enhance the development of such firms. Moreover, by providing these firms within a short market, they may help to stabilize and protect them until they are able to compete in the general market. All right. So in closing, he says, in sum, we think that through adaptationally creative use of the concept of collective capitalism, cooperative economics, and the organizational development of enterprise groups, the Black community, its social and economic institutions can create an economic and social environment conducive to remarkable business enterprise growth, development, and job creation. All right. So he goes on to say that the institutional Black church, Black media, and Black educational establishments are crucial to the process in that their ideological preaching and educational and doctrinal regimes, if effectively appropriate, can motivate the whole of African American community and perhaps other communities to commit themselves to giving their full enthusiastic financial support to such collective capitalist or cooperative approaches, which we have just described. All right. And he ends by saying imagination, vision, creativity, and an indomitable will to power is needed to fashion ourselves a wholesome and secure existence here on earth. All right, family. So we got through it and we're finished. Did the panel want to add anything? Because I know I kind of just summarized the last one because I see that it's 9:20 and we're 20 minutes over. But did anyone want to add to his American collective capitalism section?
No.
All right. Close us out, Sister Alima, or someone on the panel. Close us on out.
Okay. Family, we wrap up chapter 19, Philosophy of Black Wealth. I got an echo for some reason. Next week, we're going to touch on chapter 20, the myth of the market, economy, and Black power. My name is Lily La Poete Speaks. In order to get the links, go to lilylapoetespeaks.com and click the active discussion link in order to listen. And if you would like to join the panel, click join the panel. Peace and love.
Yes, and Sister Alima, I think that we should combine. I'm looking at chapter 20 right now. Mm-hmm. And this chapter has 491 to 502. So we're looking at 11 pages. In chapter 21, Nation Within a Nation has 11 pages. Nation Within a Nation has 13 pages. So we're looking at 24 pages if we combine both chapters. Do you want to combine it or do you want to just leave it where it is?
Yeah, let's combine them.
Okay. So then next week, y'all, we will be discussing chapter 20 and 21. Sister Alima, what is 21 about? Because I didn't flip back.
The demographic foundations of an African-American nation.
All right. So we'll be reading chapters.
Nation Within a Nation is the title of it.
Got you. Okay. So next week, we're going to be discussing chapters. Chapters 21, 20, and 21, y'all. So, I mean, after that, sis, we're down to 10 chapters.
All right now.
A blueprint for Black Power. So please, family, support the panel. Support the brothers and sisters on the panel. Lili La Poete. Hold on, let me grab your book because you have your phone on mute. You have your screen off. Please support Perceptions of Misplaced African Volume 1. The sister is working on another volume, which will be out, you think, this year, Sister Alima?
Yeah, if I decide to write it, it'll be out this year. But y'all check out Aaron Knows About Africa. Check out some pantherwear.com. Check out Ed Anime Productions. Y'all got to get some mail track. Stop sleeping on mail track. Get mail track in your house for you and your babies so you can learn. Volume 1, Volume 2, family. Get that.
Yes.
Check out Sister Camille Gaynor Jones. Get some of those beats. Get some lessons for your babies. Come on, family. Support the family. And support Do the Knowledge Radio. Subscribe to Do the Knowledge Radio. Check out his blogs. Excuse me, family. Check out his videos.
Absolutely.
Panel.
The brother said he had 700 conversations.
Yes. Wow. Like, so impressive.
That was extremely impressive. I'm like, I gotta comb through. I know that I tuned into a few of them, but when he said 700, I was taken back.
Right.
So,
wow. Great
work. So support the family. We support the family. We'll be back here next week at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a safe and productive week. Peace and Black Power.
Peace.
Peace and Black Power.